These cards here, Wasp Swarm, Vulcan's Descent, Assault Vulcan, Mass-Produced Fortress. I think this is officially the first time in my life that I have picked Wasp Swarm. I don't entirely understand why people like it so much. I think it's an absolute waste. Unless the enemy has absolutely jack diddly nothing on their rear that can potentially really deal with wasps, other than marksmen and phoenixes. So yeah, okay. I also add elite marksmen on my phoenixes. This way they will have slightly higher range than my tanks. Of course, I did actually notice, if memory serves, I always have this Damocles sword, or Damocles sword? I think it's Damocles, hanging over my head. The opponent could just, you know, pick the anti-air specialization on the marksman, and suddenly I have trouble because my entire damage is basically reliant on these phoenixes. The next turn should turn out pretty well for me because my opponent did not in any way guard against the wasps, which means that he has absolutely nothing here that really deals with them. In turn, my further and further leveled sledgehammer army is just moving in and completely tearing his units apart. They can't be stopped normally, at least, just with snipers at this point. Remember that these snipers have, or these marksmen have extended range, but they also have reduced damage. Not sure how many breakpoints exist, but they do exist. Top supply exists once again, but the battle is probably not going to last for too much longer. Both of us picked the portable shield. I'm just throwing it, if memory serves, yeah, on a bunch of tanks. These are my highest ranking tanks. Level 4. Yeah. I'm leveling a bunch more units. Am I adding on some units? I think I am. And since this shield stayed alive for the entire duration, I'm just adding another shield here in case some combat powers drop in the next few turns, in which case it will hopefully help me a lot to survive. I am adding in the incendiary bomb. I'm throwing damage on the sledges. So now these tanks, they deal absolutely vastly superior amounts of damage compared to before. It literally doubles your DPS, and since I have mech rage enabled as well, and it stacks mech rage first and then the armor piercing bullets, it's actually more than twice the DPS that the tanks now have. I'm adding in temporary buffs, so these sledges are now officially pushing 140 meters range. Since he has extended range marksman, I forgot, he has 30 more on these units, and he also bought the extended range. So there is still a lot separating his marksman from my tanks. He's in the lead there. He's throwing a missile down here, and the Vulcan in the middle, I think, is making a good amount of difference. My tanks, however, and the phoenixes, now I have multiple sources of good damage. They are not to be trifled with. Like these tanks, they are hitting. Even the giants are being hit by them. It's not the best form of DPS, but in the end, he pulls this turn out, if memory serves, because, yeah, there is not enough for me to go through all these giants. And remember that he now had multiple turns of top supply specialist. As for me, I have no extra income. Also, he has a specialist that scales better because all of his units go more tanky. Next economic option, enhancement module. I don't care at this point. I'm picking orbital strike and he's picking the shield for the Vulcans. I'm just hoping to strike most of his phoenixes down. He is leveling his stuff. I am going for range on the sledges, and officially these have now, with the range enhancement, 180 meters of range. As for his marksman, if he doesn't hit the extended range button himself, we are talking only 170, and that is a problem. When the tanks start outranging the marksman, that is a problem. He's adding in the missile interceptor. I'm not sure myself how much of an effect it has, though. So he did hit the range button, so now there is 5 meters of range between his marksman and my tanks, which is quite frankly still not good. He also shields, which means it's not too bad, but these tanks have absurd range and do good damage, so yeah. These shields were not exactly worth it. Bunch of phoenixes go down, not too much else is being hit, other than of course once the last few shots land. And yeah, I still have a very good tank line, but is it enough? That is the big question. I'm starting to hit his units really hard. but there's not too much of my tank line left. I don't even remember how this round turns out, but I think with the tower degradation it should now be enough. Yeah, I still have a lot of phoenixes. And that is one more round for me. It's getting real tight for my opponent in the meantime. The final round of reinforcements. What can you pick here? He is going for the war factory, because when in doubt, go war factory. I am guilty of the same thing. And I don't even have real space to put it anywhere reasonably. I think I always intended to sell it at that point and go for more units. Meanwhile, he's going for missile interceptor because he really thinks that my problem is the Vulcan and its missiles, along with the Stormcrawlers, of course. I'm putting the Wasps here because I'm kind of expecting him to guard over here. He's adding in more facts. We are, I think, both buying out. Yeah, I have literally everything here. I'm purchasing the remaining upgrades because I'm swimming in money. And what do I add on? I'm not entirely sure. Oh yeah, I add on some oil here in the hope that my Vulcans will ignite it. So what does he have? Yeah, he has more and more and more missile interceptors, which I'm really not sure is the correct choice here. But yeah, maybe it is. I think these tanks, I should be leveling them. Ah, I'm also going for the oil bomb. So now these are really bombing. I also, in the last few seconds, add in impact drill in the hopes that they get to connect with anything, really. Fire is barely connecting, you could see it here. And that means all of his chaff is effectively dead. Meanwhile, a good chunk of units are being held up here, but they are immediately in range, so it doesn't really matter a lot. This war factory and its missile interceptors, however, are doing absolutely amazing work. I did add EMP on the Phoenixes. They are pretty upgraded, but overall, it just turns out to be too much HP on the enemy side for my DPS, and so, yeah. With the extended range and lead marksman, this turns out to be a loss for me. It's not game over yet, but it's looking more and more dire. Oh yeah, apparently I forgot there is one final round of reinforcements. I look at these units and I think nothing here really looks like it will pay off. I could have probably gone for the rhinos and giving them photon coating just to tank an absurd amount of damage. Hackers for the shields maybe, but honestly with this amount of DPS they wouldn't last long. Wraith will just get completely blown up, so I'm selling it. Meanwhile, my opponent is taking longer to think. I am ranking up my units, adding Phoenix production on war factories. And I'm buying a triple war factory in one turn thanks to the money I've gained for the from the Wraith that I sold, the max rank Wraith. My opponent, in the meantime, he is ranking up his units. I don't know if he added anything really. Oh yeah, he added these hackers and gave them range. He also added in, for the marksman, EMP. And bought, of course, the temporary upgrades, which I did as well, except for elite recruitment. So now, the final turn, he also added in shields, and these are officially 100,000 point shields. 120,000 shield points. There's a lot of fire on the ground on both sides of the isle. I have multiple war factories moving in, but his tanks, his hackers are now officially hidden behind tanks. I am getting phoenixes, but I'm not getting them for long because they are getting EMP'd here. And they're being hacked. And then everything just is over in the blink of an eye and my opponent has won this turn. An absolutely beautiful game, even though it is a loss. It was a well-deserved loss for all my blunders in the early game. Given how that is, I think my opponent did a lot more blunders in the late game. But having the supply specialist, the top supply specialist even, and just going for, how should you put it, going for longer lasting stuff maybe, compared to what I had, I think my opponent played solidly. At least solidly enough to beat me. So yeah, thanks for watching, and I have one more cast game coming up.